Hey, it's Mikiah, and before we get into this week's episode of the podcast covering Funny Girl, which is a little later than usual, it's my fault. I'm getting over having the flu just now, so apologies for that. But anyway, I'm just coming in at the top to tell you that at the end of this video, before we sign off, there is a announcement for some changes coming to the channel. Just Kyle and I are looking to experiment a little bit with what we're able to do with this platform. But now here's our video on Funny Girl.
Hello, gorgeous.
Welcome back to the Great American Movie Review, where we review great American movies.
My name is Kyle.
And I'm Mikiah. This is a Movie of the Week style podcast where we take turns picking films and we have a casual discussion about their context and quality. This is primarily an audio show, so if you'd like to take us on the go in that fashion, you can find us on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
You're getting faster with that plug for Spotify.
I am. I'm trying to get the flow down.
Yep.
But
it's almost there.
This week I picked, it was my turn to pick. I picked a musical film, Funny Girl from 1968, which Funny Girl, if you don't know, follows the rise of real-life comedian and performer Fanny Brice, played by Barbra Streisand, as she learns to balance her career and her relationship with entrepreneur/gambler Nick Arnstein, played by Omar Sharif. The film was directed by William Wyler, most well known for Roman Holiday and Best Picture winner Ben-Hur. And it was a major hit for the time, earning over $54 million on a $14 million budget, which curiously enough was enough to make it both the most expensive film of the year and the highest grossing film of 1968. It also received massive critical acclaim, receiving 8 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, and a win for Barbra Streisand. She actually tied with Katharine Hepburn for the film The Lion in Winter, the first time that had ever happened in the Academy's history with that particular category. And I don't know if that ever happened again.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look that up. That's very curious.
Ties are uncommon, and it's an interesting thing to note. Like, people like Hepburn and Streisand would both be in the Academy voting. Mm-hmm. So basically the fact that they voted probably for themselves is the just kind of leveling it out. Like, if they didn't vote for themselves, then maybe
yeah, that was the only time it happened for Best Actress. Best Actor, it happened in 1932.
Yeah, it's a very rare thing, so it's interesting when
it's happened 6 times total.
Yeah, it feels like at this point with the amount of voting members, like, it's probably never going to happen again. But
yeah,
it's not impossible. There's just so many thousands of people that vote on the Oscars at this point in history. So
yeah, there was probably something like only dozens in the 30s and 40s. So
right. Well, and this is so the 60s here it would still be uncommon for sure. Like, that's a weird thing to happen, but it's kind of a neat fact.
Yeah, it's a neat little trivia fact. So here's what my background for musicals is. I've been in a few because it just wasn't for me. I kind of phased it out of my life. And I haven't really watched a lot. It's just not my thing. I do like this one. I like it quite a bit. I don't think it's one I'll go back to. It's just one of those, wow, that's an interesting take on a Broadway or vaudeville from the 20s and 30s.
Right. So yeah, my background on musicals is I think we both have an older sibling that was heavily involved in musical theater and just theater. And so that was definitely just a part of my life. And I did grow up watching a lot of classic musicals like Music Man and West Side Story and Sound of Music and a number of others.
Yeah, the big ones.
Yeah, the big ones. A lot of those are actually 60s musicals too. Actually, all the ones I just listed are all 60s. I think the 60s is kind of an interesting time for musicals because it's definitely not the decade with the most musicals, but the ones that came out made a huge impact, from things like West Side Story, which won 10 Academy Awards, including Best Picture in 1961, I think. And then you have, Sound of Music, also winning Best Picture. Same director between those two. And then you have this year, Funny Girls nominated for Best Picture. It didn't win, though, but what did win was Oliver, another musical.
Another musical, yeah.
The musicals, I think the percentage of like how many were being made were declining at this point, but they still held a level of prestige. And I think they had a level of kind of, I don't know, chutzpah for like how studios were allocating their resources towards musical productions. Just kind of being this whole other
so
level.
much so that they've been remaking basically every single one that studios can get their hands on.
Right, exactly. So I wouldn't be surprised if Funny Girl gets a remake at some point, although that would be hard because
it got a Broadway revival in 2022, so it absolutely would.
Well, on Broadway is one thing, but to do it again in film, I think, okay, general thoughts here, moving into talking about the actual movie contents. I agree with you. I think this movie, I was really surprised by it. I picked this movie kind of at random. I just wanted to pick a big movie musical that I'd never seen before because we haven't talked about an actual genuine musical on this show at this point. And so that was my only real goal. I settled on Barbra Streisand for some reason. I was like, okay, I'll pick a Barbra Streisand one. And I just kind of flipped a coin between this and Hello, Dolly, which came out in 1969. And so I'm glad I landed here, though, because this is, once again, I'm not that familiar with the musicals that I don't know about. I really don't know about them. Right. So I didn't know that, one, this is Barbra Streisand's like biggest role. I didn't know that this was her
This is her breakout role, yeah.
Also her featured film debut.
Yep.
It's a lot of different things going into this. I didn't know it was a Best Picture nominee. I just didn't know a lot about it. I didn't know it was the biggest hit of the year that it came out, you know? So, but then watching it, I was like, this is really good. And then I looked up all the information about it. I was like, of course, you know? So yeah, I think that this film is great. It's interesting too, because it's not doing anything new with the musical idea or even just storytelling in film. It's following a very tried and true formula. I didn't know it was based on Fanny Brice, who I'm vaguely familiar with, but not super familiar. Doesn't matter that it's based on Fanny Brice because it's one of those big musical things that's just doing big musical things and not doing biopic
Yeah, what
things.
I know about this is it's mostly when Fanny Brice is brought up in the movie, it's essentially just they took Barbra Streisand and they put her in the 30s because it's not it's not even close to what, or it's kind of close to what Fanny.
It is not a biopic.
No, it's nowhere close. And the role of Fanny Brice in this musical, and especially on Broadway, but also in the film, was written for Barbra Streisand. So it really is just Barbra Streisand.
Yeah. And this was definitely like during this period of Hollywood too. I mean, Arsenic and Old Lace, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, my last pick, was a stage to screen adaptation. There was just a real symbiotic relationship between Broadway and Hollywood for films and stuff. And they'd usually have some sort of deal in place that they'd let it end its run before they make the film, stuff like that. So this film, the Broadway runs. It's a bit. I said Broadway. God dang it! I messed up.
Broadway run. we need to get over this hump. I messed it up. All right, we need to get over this hill. You need to learn how to say this.
Broadway run.
Otherwise, you can't pick another Broadway ran film.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like video game movies today, where it's different mediums for sure, but because the creativity is there for both mediums, and because there's kind of interconnected with like what's going to be a hit, what can't be a hit, what can be a hit. It's obviously that kind of thing. If it's a huge Broadway hit show that everyone knows about, it's gonna become a movie eventually.
Right. And they still do that to some extent today. I think that it's not to the same degree at all, though. Like Mean Girls is a very recent film that came out, the 2024 musical version. And that was, I mean, the show came out and they got one of the main stars from the show in Renee Rapp to reprise her role in the film. This is something that still happens today. It's still practiced today, even though it's not as commonplace because Broadway as a form of medium, there's so many other different types of mediums compared to what people were exposed to back in the day. You had stage, you had literature, you had film as something that at this point in history had really emerged into its own right. And then you had television. And television and film were seen very differently because they operated completely differently. Today, the lines have blurred a lot between film and television, even though I
with streaming.
There are distinct differences still in how they operate. But back then, the difference was night and day. They were hardly the same thing at all. So, yeah, it's just kind of interesting seeing that kind of adaptation then brought with, your stage star. After the stage play had run its course, you get her back to the film, and then you do the film and you get kind of a second lease on that property's lifespan.
And then you make a sequel too.
Which, once again, this being based on Fanny Brice, I'm like, It really, I cannot emphasize this enough. It does not matter that it's based on Fanny Brice. This is following a tried and true formula. If you've seen A Star is Born movie in particular, which, by the way, if you're only familiar with the Bradley Cooper one with Lady Gaga from 2018, that was the third film version of just that movie, which in and of itself, a lot of people consider to kind of be a remake of another silent film. So this is very much following that kind of showbiz style love story kind of thing with a rise fall kind of arc to it. Nothing about Fanny Brice is important to know about before this movie. The only thing that's distinct about that character is that she is very funny. She's not known for being very attractive as a person, which this movie kind of pokes at that. She was known for being a very funny person, and she was a cross-medium entertainer from the 1900s, and that's kind of a neat person to kind of model something off of. But I don't think this movie had to use her specific name if it didn't want to.
Correct. However, what I'll say is, especially in the 60s, the 30s and vaudeville and everything like that were much more idolized during that time than it is today.
Either way, the vaudeville to even the film industry pipeline just directly there. A lot of stars. In fact, most of the big stars that from what's the golden age of Hollywood were kind of have their roots in vaudeville and made that transition because that was a different kind of, live performance that wasn't quite as stiff as acting. It was much more loose, and film played a lot more. It was a lot more playful of a medium overall. I mean, stage obviously is very playful, but I'm just saying vaudeville in particular translated to film, you have, a lot of comedic stuff in the silent era that translated and grew mass audience appeal. And so you do get that kind of connection. And so in films like this, you see kind of that more vaudevillian type setting of the stage situation, because the types of things that she's performing in are not, plays. It's just a series of random, what we would call today skits almost.
Yeah, comedic bits.
Right. There are comedic bits strung in with bits that aren't comedic. They're just, songs and pageantry, but it's just something, it's entertainment is all it is, though. It's entertainment for the sake of entertainment. It's people putting on a show. And so it's interesting seeing that represented because at this point in the 60s, you have that hindsight to kind of look back on it. It's also, I think that there's a two-handed thing here with the producer. I'm forgetting his name right now, but he is
Ray Stark, I think.
Yes.
He's also married to Frances.
Yeah. The son-in-law of Fanny and Nick's only, but definitely first child.
There was, I looked this up because I thought it was interesting. So they do have a son who requested to not be in the play or the musical, specifically because he's an artist, and that scandal kind of life that his mother and father lived in, he didn't want that. He wanted for his life to remain that kind of professional without the scandal of it all.
Right, which is interesting to think about because this, I mean, only really portrays it in a pretty good light for the most part. I do understand, though, that it does end with them separating, which would be taboo for sure for the time when they were, not in the 60s, but back in like the 20s.
Well, you say that, but both Nikki and Fanny both had spouses before this. Or before,
right, but
before that.
The play doesn't address that, though. The play pretends like, and the film pretends like that was never a thing. They just met and they fell in love.
And it's funny because there's a specific comedic bit that Fanny is doing that goes along the lines with, he had the nerve to tell me he'd been married before. So that also another comedic bit where she's kicked off the stage for being bad at dancing, and she's addressed as you with the thin legs or the small legs.
Right.
And that actually did happen, but the reason was she was bad at dancing, but she addressed it when she was asked why she got kicked off as, oh, I just had thin legs. They didn't like that. So it's funny to me that you can grab things from those comedic bits and they're from real life. Whereas the entire story surrounding it isn't. I'm not saying it's a critique of the movie. I'm saying it's really, really interesting when you learn the facts of Fanny and Nikki in real life, that the comedic bits that she's doing and the things that are presented in the movie as the fictional parts are actually more real.
Yeah, what they choose to present, versus what is actually more true to the person. Is kind of, it's an interesting, like, learning how much of this movie is BS because it's not a biopic once again. But it's, like, there is some still truth of the person in there to some extent. I think a lot of that credit goes to just Barbra Streisand. Obviously, this, like you said, this was kind of written for her.
Yeah.
It's interesting, too. Barbra Streisand is somebody who I am familiar with in life just because she's Barbra Streisand, not for any other reason.
Well, the Streisand effect, if you've heard of that.
I've not. What is that?
You actually don't know this?
No. What's the Streisand effect?
The Streisand effect was something. So the whole thing is it's a take on unintended consequences, basically, of attempting to hide something, remove something, censor something, but it actually backfires and increases public awareness. So I think it's like cease and desist letters, basically. So if a company sends out a cease and desist letter to another company, and that other company makes it public, it could absolutely backfire for the first company.
What does that have to do with Barbra Streisand? What was
so I think her address or her house was, she tried to, it was leaked in like the early 2000s. And so she tried to have it removed, and that just increased people's awareness of it.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. I've never heard of that, but yeah.
That's actually the only thing I know Streisand from. I have seen none of her movies or anything like that.
Right, same. I'd not seen her in anything. I've just heard of her. I mean, she's in the show The Nanny. She's like an idol of Fran Drescher's character. But yeah, like, she's a very famous public figure. I'd heard her music, some of her songs.
Yeah, I knew she was a musician, and I knew she was and
I knew she was an actor.
That's about it.
As well. But like, I'd never seen anything that she was in, so I like didn't get it. But like, from the moment that she shows up, her first like kind of moments in the movie, she like looks in the mirror or whatever, and she goes,
"Hello, gorgeous."
And from that moment, I was like, I get it. I get Barbra Streisand.
Yeah.
Like I felt, I was like, oh, this is why there's like this whole like thing around her as a person. Like, she has that charisma, that just kind of like presence on screen, and a very unique quality to her as well that nobody else.
Yeah, she's
really
playing a character
has.
in a way that I've kind of never seen before.
Right.
I've seen imitations of it, I guess. Well, that's hindsight.
Right.
But yeah, I've never seen this kind of thing done, but I guess it's just a exaggerated take on what Fanny would have been like.
Right. She's kind of hyperactive and neurotic, and also totally confident in her abilities, you know, and she's going to get it her way, which I guess is probably what Barbra Streisand was like hearing what I heard. There's a famous quote from William Wyler, the director on this film, that's basically like somebody asked him if it was difficult working with Barbra Streisand, and he just said, no, not too hard considering it was the first movie she ever directed. Which is a really funny way of saying yes.
Yeah, she seems a bit like the in this movie. Like her mood switches like that, and it's just onto a different thing.
Well, she's gonna do what she's gonna do, and she's gonna do it, and that nobody's gonna stop her from doing it. So that's really her character, and it's a great character to follow in this film, and that's really where like the meat of it was. If that character wasn't as strong, and her performance as that character wasn't as strong as she is, then
this movie wouldn't be this movie. Yeah.
Yeah,
without the funny girl, this isn't funny girl. Hot take.
Yeah. Right. So it's just not the same thing at all. And she kind of really makes it, because as much as like the actual plot machinations and relationship drama and everything is, you know, somewhat rote, to be honest. It's just that character stands out as the really unique aspect, and you are following her. She's the main character. She's in pretty much every scene that you're going to be watching. So she really carries you through. You're not
watching that particular scene or that particular musical bit. You're not watching it for how it's going to affect the plot or how things are going to turn out. You're watching it because Fanny's in it. That's about it.
Right. She's just like your eyes are just glued to her. She's just got that presence.
Yep.
So on the other side of this kind of, you know, your headliner in this film as Nick Arnstein, you have Omar Sharif, who he's not somebody I'm very familiar with either. I just haven't really seen any films from him. I think that
Lawrence of Arabia is his most well-known, and that's the one that I've seen.
I have not seen Lawrence of Arabia, believe it or not.
Oh,
so
interesting.
That's like at the top of my list of shames. But
not a Peter O'Toole kind of guy, aren't you?
It's just really long, and sometimes I'm like true. Casually just crossing movies off that list, and I'm like, I've got a couple hours, let's cross a movie off, and I'm like, well, can't do that one because that one's a little too long for right now. But I just need to like intentionally make time for it is all. But either way, I think that he's good in this role. He's not. The movie doesn't demand nearly as much from him, and I mean that literally. Like he doesn't have to perform a lot of musical numbers. In fact, I think there's just one that he participates in.
Yeah.
You know? And so there's not a lot of that part of the performance really demanded from him. He just has to be kind of a suave and kind of captivating individual.
He's there to be Pepe Le Pew to her Mel Brooks.
Well, yeah, she has to be believable as somebody that she would be intrigued by and kind of fall in love with. And I think
it's his mystique, because that definitely feels like it is, because from the musical and from Nicky Arnstein in real life, or is it Arnstein? Arnstein. Okay. Nicky Arnstein.
Nicky Arnstein.
Name. Yeah. So Nicky Arnstein is essentially just a con man in real life, and I think the musical definitely tones that down quite a bit. He just feels like
kind of makes him more a gambler.
Yeah, but
that kind of gets in over his head.
The movie portrays it as like a gambler he's like a gambler in the nightlife, and then he's just a suave man in the daytime. But Nicky Arnstein was essentially just a con man through and through.
Well, and that's another thing of like the fact versus fiction. Like Nicky Arnstein had been arrested before they were married together.
My point with bringing that up, though, was I haven't seen the musical portrayed anywhere else, but I have to imagine that if it wasn't Omar Sharif, if it was somebody just from Manhattan, it would have been a little bit more of that like con man coming out.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel that from him. So
he does the suave part well, but I was a little bit surprised when it was like kind of where it was going with that character from the way he was portrayed early on, at least.
Right, because the movie wants people to think that he's a criminal, but I didn't see him as a criminal. I just saw him as a man being taken advantage of.
Right. Because the movie goes out of its way to make him look like a good guy, which this, I think, comes down to some of that influence from having a producer be so, specifically involved in the family matters of the subject. Because at the very beginning of the film, when he goes to the party, after she bumps into him the second time, and he goes back to her place after she has a show, and they're having a party, and he's playing cards with Fanny's mom and aunts. Right. And he has like a ridiculous hand. Like he has like, what is it? 3 kings or something like that, and an ace. Like, I'm like that. There's very few things that are just going to beat that casually. And he pretends like he doesn't have something good. He folds, he does the right thing or the nice thing. So it's trying to win.
Which gamblers typically don't do. They're competitive to a fault.
Right. So they're like, no, this guy doesn't have a big ego. He loves gambling, but he doesn't have an ego about it.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, the movie portrays that as because he always wins. He's good at it. And so when he's on a losing streak later on in the film, he starts to have a little, like his ego gets hurt and bruised. But yeah, like they really do try to make him out like as nice of a person as possible, despite the fact that, yeah, he's a gambler and he then gets himself involved in crooked deals, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think it's
what he does.
I don't think it. Yeah. Because what is the other con man gets him to actually do the crime by trying to work at his insecurities for his wife being the breadwinner, I guess. So it's an interesting thing that could be set up, and that could be like there's payoffs to that, but I just don't really feel like Nicky Arnstein in this movie. Like he just doesn't. He feels out of place for a movie like this, and he feels out of place for like what the character was or what the character goes through.
Yeah, like I believe their relationship. I think that they have good chemistry. I think why I ultimately still think that Sharif works in this role.
But I think that's mostly just Barbra Streisand and Omar Sharif's charisma.
And I don't think that the writing really like backs him up very well. He feels a little bit like this. Especially knowing like it's based on a real person, I'm like, this is not how this person was. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, he just feels overused for what the setup was supposed to be.
Yeah, like that's where the movie, I think if there's any fault with it's framing it primarily around this relationship, and I'm not quite as compelled by the relationship as a whole as I am by just her rise. But I also understand like she just has a rise. I don't know if Fanny Brice had any fall from grace at some point in her career. I don't think she did. She died at 59. She died fairly young.
Well, 59's not very young for when did she die? In like the 1950s?
Right. Yeah. Just she died like 10 years before they made the play or whatever. I don't know. But either way, it's still like, it's not as long of a life for somebody to have a big fall from grace. And it doesn't seem like she really did have that. So I guess to give the movie more that rise fall, kind of thing, you kind of lay that on the shoulders of the Nicky Arnstein character. But that's just kind of the movie kind of going through its thing. That's once again that very A Star Is Born thing. He's very affluent. She comes up from below, which also isn't true. She came from a wealthy family, Fanny Brice. But in the movie, it portrays her as coming from, she's really struggling to make her way, and then they meet, fall in love, and then while she's on the rise, he's on the decline. It's that kind of thing. So I guess that's just using his character as how they facilitate the structure of the film.
I guess so.
And if you're doing it through her.
Yeah. And if you're going to pick I guess the antagonist of this movie would be like their relationship eventually. I guess Nicky is just the correct man to use for that.
Right. Because at the first half of the film, you do get her like trying to fight her way to like get things the way that she wants them, and there's a little bit of tension of like, is she gonna get fired and stuff, but she's such a smash hit that he can't fire her even though he's like a pain in his neck.
Yeah, the relationship between her and the showrunners that she works with, Ziegfeld.
Yeah, like that's kind of the main like conflict in the first half of the film, and then once you get to the second half, which, okay, this following basic musical structure as well, you have a lot of songs kind of front loaded in the first 2 hours. And then the last hour, you have like 3 or 4 songs.
Right.
So, which is just, that's musical structure. It allows the drama to come forward. And kind of you feel it differently. It's just part of how they're written a lot of the time. So sometimes that bothers me. And it really depends on if the drama is working well enough for me. Here it was, so it didn't really bother me that it kind of deviated from being a musical at times towards the end. But every one of these classic musicals that I've not seen before, I'm like, okay, what's the song that the song's going to come on? And I'm going to be like, that song, I know that one. You know, I've heard that a million times, but I never knew it was from this. And this one, the song is the Don't Rain on My Parade, which is the act closer, you know, before the before the intermission. I was like, that's the song. I wasn't sure if there would be one, but I was like, hey, I recognize that one.
Leo jumping up and pointing at the screen. Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, it was Leonardo DiCaprio and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood pointing at the screen.
Yeah.
So it does have that big kind of musical number, although I don't even think that's the best song. I think the song People earlier on in the film is...
I was partial to People.
Tremendous. And I think...
Which is a funny sentence to say.
Yeah, that song I think is really strong. It's kind of funny too, because you get the musical number songs that are like the diegetic songs that happen in film, you know? And those songs are more playful and comedic, you know, because that's her persona on stage. But then you really get Barbra Streisand kind of doing her thing when she's off stage, you know, and it's the non-diegetic musical numbers like People and like the last song in the film, which I also think is tremendous. So it's kind of interesting. You get
My
multiple,
Man.
Yeah, My Man.
My Man.
You get different flavors of songs, but it's kind of separated by what she does in real life, I say in quotes, versus the stuff that she does while she's performing. Again,
it is Barbra Streisand essentially doing this in real life. They just decided to film her for 2.5 hours, I guess.
Right.
She just gets out of bed, starts singing Sadie, Sadie.
Yeah. Kind of paralleling the real life kind of stuff with like affairs and everything. Apparently, Barbra Streisand and Omar Sharif had an affair while filming this movie. While both of them were married.
No doubt.
Barbra Streisand was married to Elliot Gould, another actor. Probably familiar with
Ruben
him.
from Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I watched something with him recently, and it was definitely not Ocean's 11, but it was an older film. But yeah, she was had an affair on Elliot Gould during this, and William Wyler apparently knew that and tried to like just kind of let them, you know, have that so that their chemistry was, you know, he wasn't trying to interfere with that, but he's just trying to use it for
this
the
is the 60s, bro. Two charismatic people in the vicinity of one another. Yeah, that's gonna happen. That's just gonna happen.
Yeah, but there's some weird behind the scenes stuff like that with this movie, which in some ways that can help with not saying the affair part, but if the stars get into a relationship, then that can help their chemistry if they're supposed to be romantically involved. And I do think that is a factor here. Like they do have very good screen chemistry. Other things, like there were just some weird behind the scenes things, like Omar Sharif is Egyptian, and during the filming of this, the 6 Days War broke out, which I wasn't really familiar with, but
between Israel and Egypt.
Yeah, and so they wanted to remove him from the film, and I guess good on the producers for, you know, not doing that, because I don't know, it's kind of what's really interesting about that to me is what's going on in the world today and kind of some of the parallels that we've seen there with certain...
Well, hold on. Israel has been in that kind of mess for about 7 years, so it's not really...
Well, the parallels is that it's never stopped, I guess.
Yeah, so, it's just never stopped.
Right, there's always a conflict there.
But it's there's always a conflict. Like it wasn't there.
Yeah, there's always a conflict there, and
they didn't end up taking him off the project, so and they didn't take him off the project. It obviously wasn't that big a deal.
Right. One thing that really did strike me with this is getting William Wyler, which apparently Sidney Lumet was actually signed on to do this until like I think like
oh, that would have been interesting,
right? Because he's never done a musical, I don't think, and that's not the type of movie that he's known for at all.
And the closest he's done to like plays, I would say,
12 Angry Men.
12 Angry Men's obviously the go-to, but he did Murder on the Orient Express, which also has that kind of vibe. I think it would have been interesting. I
would
totally see that.
All of the directors that they had apparently consideration for this were all like top tier directors from the time. So I think no matter who they got, this would have been great. Because if your backup to Sidney Lumet is William Wyler, who just directed Ben-Hur back in 1959, so not that, it's pretty recent history still, and that movie still holds a tied record for most Oscar wins of any film ever, with Titanic and Lord of the Rings Return of the King at 11.
Right.
So like, yeah, William Wyler's a tremendous filmmaker, and he doing this film, I know he made jokes kind of disparagingly about how Barbra Streisand was very controlling on set, but man, the man knows how to work a shot. You know, there are parts of this movie where I'm just like, gorgeous, you know, like just like that. The filmmaking, I'm just like, yes, this is like, you got a real, just like great filmmaker behind this camera.
Cut to Barbra Streisand looking at a mirror, and it's not a mirror. It's just funny girl as a whole. Hello, gorgeous.
Right. Well, that's what she said to her Oscar when she won it. So that's an iconic Oscars moment.
She didn't say, you like me, you really like me.
That's a different iconic Oscars moment. But yeah, no,
I see that Gene Kelly was also considered for the role, especially with like choreography and blocking. That would be an insane. And also, Barbra Streisand can direct the film still. It could just be Gene Kelly doing the choreography and things like that. That would have been interesting too.
Right. I mean, Gene Kelly, he directed, I mean, Singin' in the Rain and with Stanley Donen, and he also directed Hello, Dolly, the next year's Barbra Streisand movie, and On the Town. And I mean, he wasn't just a screen star. He was an accomplished filmmaker, particularly with musicals at that point. So I think any of these people that they were going to get for this, it would have turned out to be a tremendous film. And I think William Wyler being the director that they got, I mean, that's a great guy to get to direct this. He really knows, like I said, how to work that camera. He gets some really sweeping shots in here. I love the final shot of the first act with the boat, going around there. You get just like them on the docks, outside the lobster restaurant with the sunset. There's so many just beautiful images and shots. It's like also set design stuff. I love classic film set design stuff. Like the stark use of like just singular colors, like that room where they have the dinner in with just like the red, just like, I love that stuff. I love seeing that.
Or like the alleyway that's very dark, but it's just lit up by like the restaurant, or not restaurant, where they are, it's lit by that. And it's just lit by one street light. Yeah.
And that's not even talking about like the stuff that's actually like on stage, like literally in the movie.
Yeah.
Which is also all done in fabulous fashion. Like, that whole sequence where she comes out in like the wedding dress and she's got the pillow underneath. But like that whole sequence is filmed so beautifully up to that point that it kind of makes that moment even funnier, because you really do get kind of the pageantry of this. I'm like, I get why, like, if I was back then, in the early 1900s, I'd be like, yeah, let's go see a show. And I want to just see some pageantry and something,
Yeah, it's like the end of... It's like the end of Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
Where
right.
Where it's just all the I don't even know what to call it, but like that choreography being done, and it's just like, where did this come from?
But it makes the comedy so much better when she comes out and basically interrupts the pageantry of it all to make it a comedy show instead.
Right.
So, just like fun stuff like that.
That's where comedy comes from: expectation, and then what eventually happens.
Yeah. There's also just
subversion.
A lot of the fun lines. Really, most of them are coming from Fanny in this thing, but some of them are just kind of
her
like...
mother's got a good one. Like, that man belongs anywhere, and like a sponge also can fit anywhere, or something like that.
The movie's actually pretty funny. Like, it goes for... Obviously, the main character is a very famous comedian from history, but the movie successfully is funny, because there are movies about funny people that aren't funny. And the movie's called Funny Girl, so you'd hope it's funny.
Yes, the movie Funny People is not exactly very
Exactly.
funny.
That's a prime example. But yeah, like there's like a point where they're on the boat, you know, where she bails on her company towards the end of their tour for their show to go and meet with him, and they're on the boat and they're sitting down and there's a guy that looks like the captain of the boat. She goes, I like that beard on that captain. Makes him look so trustworthy. It's like stuff like that. Like that comment came out of nowhere. It had no bearing on anything. It was just funny.
It makes sense. Nikki Arnstein in this movie only has a mustache. She can't be trusted.
Right, exactly. Cannot trust a man with just a mustache. I know that's a recent trend right now. Mustaches are back, I guess. So a lot of untrustworthy people in the world right now.
Yeah. I mean, hey, look at the state of the world. That's how untrustworthy they are.
But yeah, the movie kind of goes on.
Except for Sam Elliott, trust him with anything.
Yeah, so the movie goes on in the second act, and like I said, it kind of ends up getting to the point where she's at like the pinnacle of her success, you know, but he's lost out on some deals, his gambling, he's been on a losing streak, you know, he's made some bad investments. He has to sell the house. They move back to New York where she can be close to her, you know, so she doesn't have to do like a longer commute. And it's still a really nice apartment, but he's just feeling down on himself because she's basically supporting him secretly, and they don't know how to be good for each other in this situation. And it's kind of like, if this movie came out in the 30s, which it wouldn't have, because there's some stuff in here that I think would go against the Hays Code. 68 is technically the end of that. So,
well, there were pre-Hays Code things, so it could have been
right
if it was like the early 30s.
Right,
it would have
it's
to be
just
the early 30s.
I don't think that you'd have a movie like this ending in the way it does with them separating, you know, back in the 30s. You know, it would
have to be a happy ending instead of like a bittersweet one,
right? Because I do love that this movie does get to have that bittersweet ending. Because basically, you know, they followed Shakespeare rules back in the day. It was like, if it was a drama, kind of ends tragically, and if it's a comedy, it ends with a wedding. You know?
Yeah,
not specifically, but loosely. So like those Stars Born is a drama, and it ends with tragedy. Like that movie has a very tragic ending, and it always does. Every version of it has that same tragic ending. This doesn't have that tragic ending. It has that, like you said, bittersweet, where it's
like 50-50.
Right. They accept that they still have love for each other, but they are not going to be able to work through these things because quite possibly just they don't match in a way anymore at this point where
Fanny's essentially saying, you know what? I'll visit you in jail. That's about
it. Right. His ego has fallen to, you know, has taken way too much of a hit. He's not the same person he was. And they just accept that they have to move on, you know, and the sequel to this funny lady, you know, has her pursuing another relationship. And apparently Nikki makes a return, like this Omar Sharif comes back for the sequel. I don't know anything about that one though. So
I'm out of prison. Where's my wife?
Yeah, it's interesting that this does have a follow-up, you know, that follows a separate relationship that I guess Fanny Brice must have had in her life. James Caan.
It's like poetry, it rhymes.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, I think that this is a really great film. I think that the production aspects of it really elevate. I think the material, I don't necessarily think the actual story here is anything particularly great. It's just really well done. And you have the Barbra Streisand leading it and William Wyler's tremendous direction really kind of anchoring this thing and making it one of, I think, the great film musicals. So, do you have anything else that you want to talk about with it?
Nope.
Cool. Cool. Well, then I guess we'll get into scoring.
This is another one of those. You have a tendency to pick movies that speak for themselves, especially those like older movies. It's like, all right, it's been tread upon. Everyone said basically everything about this. If we're looking for stuff to say that's new about this movie, we'd have to really dig deep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to analyze once again, there's not too much to really analyze about a lot of like what it's doing, but it is like, I guess I'll say one more thing. So this, like I said, is really coming towards the end of the musical trend. Specifically, the 70s really kind of took off in their own direction. Not to say that there aren't very great famous musicals in the 70s, but it continued the decline of their prominence within.
Yeah, Blazing Saddles. We already brought one up.
But like, you know, Fiddler on the Roof came out in 71. That was massive. You know, you had lots of other musicals just coming out throughout the 70s, but it really kind of evolved into different types of films. You know, musicals weren't like the big production thing all the time. Now they could be other types of things. So
yeah, I think that's the important thing. I would say musicals didn't really drop off so much as like Broadway musicals dropped off.
Right.
So there wasn't really much source to, you know, get to, or there wasn't much to find that people really like latched onto the way that they latched onto musicals in the 50s and 60s.
And in the post-Hays Code era, people were more interested in these newer types of films that were coming out. These films that were allowed to have their darker edges, films like Chinatown that we've brought up, films like Network, you know, things that were able to do different things that we weren't able to see in films before. People were more drawn to that. So like things like the big crowd-pleasing musical went by the wayside a little bit, because it's just the industry changed. So this kind of represents an interesting point.
I brought it up twice, but because Blazing Saddles was the top of the box office in 74, I mean, that wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. It wouldn't even have been released. So
Right. So I think that this movie, it exists in an interesting spot because one, it is leaning into more classic ideas and themes, and even like structure and style for like movie musicals, because, you know, thinking of things like West Side Story and Sound of Music, you know, they have a little bit of a different quality to them in terms of like their filmmaking, their like the way that, not just the way that they're filmed, but the, you know, the scale and scope of them. It just feels different than like those 50s musicals, like Guys and Dolls and stuff. Great musicals, but they don't have, they kind of, there was an evolution there through the time period. But this one feels a little bit more classic, more like those 50s ones, but with, you know, a better perspective, you know, of what you get from the late 60s at this point. That has that perspective to look back at those 50s and 40s films, kind of use that structure and format, but then kind of, you know, take what has the industry, the evolutions of the industry, and kind of lean into that at the same time. So it's kind of, I don't know, to talk about a movie musical, I mean, this is about as movie musical as you're going to get, you know, based on its, you know, what type of movie it is, and it's just place and time when it came out in the industry. So yeah. But yeah, we can move into scoring.
I mean, apropos, the vaudeville was the beginning of like Broadway musicals. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it's just that connection mostly.
Musicals and sound film emerged at the exact same time, because the first ever sound film was, or talkie, you know, was The Jazz Singer, which is a terrible movie if anybody's ever watched that, both for its overt racism, but also because it's just a bad movie. But most of the movie is silent except for the singing. And so musicals were just inherent once sound came into pictures. So yeah, it's kind
of funny, the parallel between that and like, obviously this movie isn't silent except for the musical bits, but the musical bits, when they kick on, I couldn't help but notice the fact that most of them were just dubbed.
Right.
It's just strange going from like Barbra Streisand's like normal talking voice in a different microphone to singing voice, and it's all like 1930s, 40s kind of like grit to it.
Yeah, that kind of aspect to it too, for sure. Which I think that's something that you don't see quite as much in, like, you still have that quality in like Sound of Music, but it feels a little bit more natural, I think, from that movie.
Right.
You know, whereas this one feels more in line with those classic musicals. But anyway,
what's funny is yeah. No, we can get into scoring and then we can discuss things further.
Yeah.
I realized you asked me if there was anything else about this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I said nope, and then immediately went into a tangent.
Well, so did I. So
yeah.
So scoring as we do it is the same as we always do it. We keep it 0 to 2, 0 being not good, 1 being good, 2 being great. We just keep it broad for the sake of, we're just kind of starting a discussion here. It's just, this is our show's rating. It doesn't reflect our own personal feelings, but we do like to break it down by these 10 categories, and we'll do best out of 20. So first category, as usual, is writing.
I feel the dialogue here is the best part of the writing, obviously,
great
because it's so
writing.
smart. It's very smart dialogue. I think the plot, as you said, it was simple, not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it kind of hinders some of the characters in a way that just felt weird to me.
This is a firm 1 to me for the writing.
Yeah,
Character
I would
writing,
say,
dialogue writing, great. Actual story writing and everything, the actual story and plot of this film is almost secondary. And I think everybody who made this film kind of knows that, you know, but it still doesn't make it less true. So,
yeah.
So I feel like it's, a firm 1 for the writing is what I feel.
Yeah. I would say between that, like, firm 1 to like strong 1 territory.
Right.
There's just a few things that I would tweak there to make it a 2, but it's not too far off.
Yeah. World building is our next category. I'm personally kind of at a strong 1 with this one too. Simply because it spends a lot of time with that relationship. And I feel like the most interesting parts of the world building are in the actual theater. And I think that, like, and her rise through that. And I think focusing primarily on the relationship aspect of things, you don't get quite as much as I'd like to with her rise in the theater.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So
it's a bit like, and I know you don't like when I bring this up, but like when Napoleon, the movie, focused on the relationship, I think it honestly hindered some of the other things that we could talk about with Napoleon's life.
Right. I agree with that movie.
As much.
Sure.
I mean, that movie is 2 hours long and an hour 45 is devoted to him and Josephine. So it's a bit awkward in that case. But
yeah. All right. Our next category is characters.
I think my floor for this is a strong one I feel like Barbra Streisand's character is just so that good.
Her character is like a 3.
Carried by her.
Yeah. But then the rest of the characters are, you know, there are some fun side characters. I think that like Ziegfeld is really fun as like the manager and kind of him getting more and more frustrated, but he can't do anything about it. You know? It's just kind of a fun thing. And she's like on the phone with them and
don't give yourself an ulcer. Oh, that's funny coming from you. You gave me that ulcer.
Yeah. Right. Like stuff like that. Like I like the interplay there. I like the interplay with her mother. I'm forgetting the actress's name, but she actually got nominated for an Academy Award for supporting actress.
Kay Medford?
Yes, and she came from the play as well. She's like one other main person, I think, that came from the play. Yeah. And she does a good job in her role. She's not like a lot of screen time for that character, but she does have a few impactful scenes.
I mean, that's happened before. Network, there were a couple of like only 5 minutes of screen time and won an award or just got nominated. So
I don't know if it's as prominent of scenes as those are, but there's still some scenes that are good here that I understand that, you know, or she didn't win, she got nominated. I don't know if I said she won or not, but yeah, she got nominated.
Yeah, she only got nominated.
Yeah, she did not win.
Because best actress, best leading actress was the only win.
Right. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it was nominated for 8, which is quite a few, obviously, any year. Some people this year, sorry, this is going to be a slight tangent. I'll keep it short.
Right. I'll keep it short. That's what we do
here. This year, a lot of people are like complaining about like Margot Robbie didn't get nominated and Greta Gerwig didn't get nominated for director for Barbie. And so they're like, the Academy Awards just didn't care about Barbie. And I'm like, the Academy Awards
didn't
nominated...
it still get like 8
Yeah, the Academy Awards still nominated Barbie for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. And if you wanted them to get their, you know, nominations in there, like Greta and Margot, who were never going to win either of those categories anyway.
Who do you take out?
Who do you take out? I've seen most of those nominees. The only ones I haven't seen is Zone of Interest. That's beside the point. Anyway, I wouldn't know who to take out there, but also to say that the Academy like ignored Barbie, Margot Robbie still got a Best Picture nomination because she was a producer for Barbie, and
true.
Greta Gerwig still got nominated for writing Barbie, which is I think the stronger aspect. If I had to pick her getting a nomination for directing or writing, not saying that it has to be an either or, but the writing is where I would definitely give that to her over the directing if I had to have one or the other. So I do think that if she did get nominated for directing, that could have been well deserved. You know, she did a great job with that film. There's lots of different stylistic things in there in particular that I think could have gotten her in that category with the way she does incorporate musical numbers and, you know, other fun film techniques. But I don't blame anybody for not putting her there. And the Academy 100% gave Barbie its due. With
nope, sorry, Mikiah.
Academy
all
Awards.
I'm hearing is you hate women.
Also, that movie topped the box office. It made $1.5 billion. Like, it wouldn't even matter if it got nominated for a single
and Oppenheimer
award.
were the biggest thing this year. So
do you know how many films and studios and even individual filmmakers would trade an Oscar for $1 billion hit? Pretty much every single one of them.
Yeah, but do you know how many fans would trade $1 billion for just one Oscar nomination? Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. Sorry, that was a little rant. But yes, this movie was definitely recognized for everything. You know, it was highly acclaimed, clearly, because it got nominations basically across the board. It's going back to its characters. I'm a little mixed on the Omar Sharif character. You know, I like him. I like his performance even, and I like
I like Omar Sharif. I don't like Nikki Arnstein.
It's like, where do you take that to the characters versus, you know, the actual, you know, the writing and all of that stuff, separating those things. It's just, she's so good.
So good.
She is so good. I'm having a hard time.
She could be saying anything and it's just that charisma. So
right.
It's one of those things. Where do you draw the line between the acting portion and the character writing portion?
Right. You know what? I think that on characters, I go a 1, a really strong 1 just for her. But I think that everything around her, I don't think is quite as strong as her.
Same. I was either or for this because I can overlook Nikki Arnstein, especially because of Fanny Brice's character. Yeah. But and I think a strong 1.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about what I like most about this movie, and aside from Barbra Streisand, it's literally every other category that we're going to be talking coming up. So,
yes,
our next category is directing. I've already heaped on a lot of praise for William Wyler's direction of this film. I think it's one of the strongest aspects and really makes it stand out from a lot of its contemporaries, from, you know, those 50 movies that I would say this is more closely resembles.
Right.
I think that it really stands out, and I think the direction is a big part of that. So directing for me isn't easy too.
When we talked about Arsenic and Old Lace, I think it's well directed. Don't get me wrong,
right?
But it's contained, so it's much easier.
Right, it's not.
It's a much easier project to deal with. This, on the other hand, is an insane kind of project, just coming from a musical standpoint,
right?
And it adds so much to be in like different aspects of like the world and that kind of thing.
This doesn't feel like a stage play, like in terms of like the presentation of it, like the structure of it, you know, and the musical aspect of it definitely feels like it's coming from the stage world. But the actual production of the film, it's very filmic. It is very going different locations, like you said. You know, Wyler has a great sense of how to shoot things, and you know, it feels very cinematic. So
I absolutely agree with the two.
Yeah. All right, acting.
It's a 2.
Acting's a 2 because even where the characters fall short, I think the acting is still strong. So
and Nikki Arnstein, obviously we've talked about his character, but Omar Sharif plays him great.
Yes, yeah.
It's a little weird to me, but not because of Omar Sharif. It's because the character doesn't feel like him. Right. But he's still good as that character.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so visuals is our next category. I think that's another pretty easy too. I think the cinematography here is great. It did pick up a nomination for cinematography. It's a beautiful film. Technicolor glory in all of its Technicolor glory. You know, I've already gushed about that enough. If you want to hear us talk about Technicolor, you can watch the Robin Hood video because that video is half about Technicolor. So,
as little as I talk in this episode, I talk even less in that episode.
Editing, it got a best editing nomination as well. I actually think editing in particular is really interesting in this film in differentiating it from being a stage play.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are even times in like musical numbers and stuff where it edits around in different locations and costumes in very fun ways. I think the editing in this film was really great. One of the bigger standouts to me for this. I was really kind of taken aback, honestly, by how creatively they used editing in certain sequences in particular.
Yeah, I was a strong 1 coming into this, but obviously if you're a 2, I'm a strong 1. We can bump it up.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. Sound. It got nominations for both its score and it got nominated for one song, Funny Girl, which that's the thing with stage to screen adaptations. There's usually at least one song that they throw into the film that's not from the stage play. I think there's a 2-factor thing here. One is that it gives like, oh, and it features a new song that you didn't hear on the stage play if you saw it that way. And also...
That was to sell tickets.
Yeah. And it also gets you something that can get nominated for Best Original Song because that's a category at the Oscars. So,
yep.
And usually that works out. Like, I know Les Mis did that in 2012. They had an original song. It got a Best Song nomination at the Oscars. So, like they pretty much always do that. And, that's not even
among like the tiers of Oscars, because there are tiers, right? Obviously winning for documentary short or live action short is different than winning Best Picture or Best Director, that kind of thing. For me, and this is just me personally, Best Original Song is the least for
Absolutely.
me.
Because I 100%
so
agree.
Arbitrary just to get films nominated, that extra nomination.
Yeah.
They jump through so many hoops to get just one more Oscar, and it's like, but did it help the movie though? No,
I feel like that's mostly for the actual ceremony itself, because they give the songs a disproportionate amount of televised airtime. Because
they
it's an easy thing for the show.
Whole songs during the show.
I do feel like they should condense it to like a medley or something, but as it is, usually,
and it'd be cool. You can get a composer to kind of like chart that.
Frequently those songs are some of the better parts of the actual Oscar presentations, but I would still be like, I don't know how much time we need to give the songs when I think it's clearly the least important Oscar of them all. But anyway, that's just kind of a side tangent about that. But yeah, it's still, it got nominated in 3 different categories that we put into our sound. Because I mean, the score is tremendous. It's that musical. This movie starts with a 5-minute overture, just like you would get in, if you went to the theater, and you get in those classic musical films too, which is a black screen and an overture. And it's great. I love that stuff. It really just kind of primes you for the experience. And so, yeah, the music is obviously tremendous in this. There's the one thing to get over with the music is if you're not used to watching musicals from this decade, you can tell when it's dubbed.
You can tell. Yeah.
And so that's just a byproduct of what technology was able to do at the time. Not everything can be Les Mis from 2012, where they're painstaking about like live recording. Most films still don't do that today. But on the other side of that, I think that people back then would be extremely jarred by musicals today because of how like tuned they
seamless
sound.
It is.
Well, how tuned they sound too. Like the voices.
Oh, true.
I hate it when it sounds like that in a musical. Like I don't even mind pop songs sounding that way to some extent, but like in a musical, I want that kind of like.
Well, if it's deliberate, sometimes it can actually be tuned to an incorrect note.
Yeah.
And there's a few examples I could give for that, but yeah, that's just a different thing on its own. That's sound engineers like struggling with today's kind of thing. That's not really that. The only thing oh no, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
All right. It would seem we have reached an impasse. I'm assuming you're a 2 for this, right?
For sound, I am a 2.
Okay. I again was feeling strong 1, but only because of my personal thing of it was very immersion killing, going from Barbra Streisand just talking to singing, and that's about it. So, but shoot, what did we give Enter the Dragon on for sound? We gave it a 2, right?
We gave it a 1.
We gave it a 1. Well,
we gave it a 1 because it was hindered by its time.
Yeah, it leans on that dubbing. Yeah, that's the whole thing being dubbed. So yeah, strong 1 to 2. I think it's the exact same thing. So we'll just put it 2.
Yeah, because the rawness of the musical performance is a big part of Barbra Streisand's performance in this film, and she's so good there that I can forgive the dubbing a little bit, even though I don't think she's necessarily the best at even lip syncing it. But I still think that, I don't know, a musical like this, like the songs being great, the songs coming across well, on top of the musical score components, all working together is what makes a musical great, as a musical. Right. And I think that this movie is a great musical. So I have to give it a 2 personally.
Well, it's funny, we've been talking about musical for so long, but I see the next category is genre, which is musical.
Yeah, it's a romantic comedy drama musical, which just kind of broadly fits into musical. Hannah gets very particular. My wife, she gets very particular about calling certain things musicals or not. Mm-hmm. And this is like, so sometimes we'll watch a movie and it's like there's singing in it, and it would technically be a musical, but it's not like a musical.
Okay, so Bruce Almighty is a musical because he sings "What If God Was One of Us." Yeah, I gotcha.
But there's it's like a capital M musical versus just like a lowercase M musical, and this is a capital M musical. It's also the source of it.
If it's if it's like a West Side Story or like this, it's that Broadway becoming like a musical movie. That's different than, say, like Frozen.
Right. I don't like Frozen. I don't like Frozen's music.
Neither do I.
But that's not to get into Frozen right now, I guess.
Wait, you don't like Oscar winner for best original song "Let It Go"? Oh, unbelievable!
This is a weird thing. I don't think Idina Menzel's voice fits that character design.
Who's Idina Menzel? It's Adele Dazeem, dude.
Oh yeah, I don't think Adele Dazeem's voice fits that character design.
That's a deep cut. That's a deep John Travolta cut.
I don't know if that's so much of a cut because the internet was around and that got memed to hell. So.
Well, true. Well, it's a deep cut for anybody who doesn't know about that, or
right.
Anybody who wasn't on the internet at that time.
I think anybody watching an hour-long review of Funny Girl probably is aware of that.
Yeah, you know what? You may be right. Except for the people watching this might be over the age of 65, so that true. Takes it away again. It all just depends. Did they watch the Oscars and also know Idina Menzel?
Right. Well, anyway. But yeah, this is a musical. Clearly. If we wanted to go so far as to call it, a romance as well, I think the romance necessarily isn't the strongest part, but I still think the musical...
Yeah, romance would be a 1, but the musical is a 2.
I still think the musical aspect of the film, which is why you watch it, that's the, that's what you're going for with this. I still think it's a 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The audience goers wouldn't necessarily be romance. It would just be, it would be strictly musical first.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Romance is just an aspect of it. It's a 2 musical. That's what it is.
Yep.
All right. And Impact, I feel like it's a pretty easy 2 again for Impact, just because we talked about a lot of stuff. All the Oscar love that it got, Barbra Streisand's Wind. It was the highest grossing film of 1968, which was a year. Actually, do you know what the second highest grossing film was of that year?
1968.
I know what it is. So,
not off the top of my head.
Okay, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, cool.
Which is a crazy thing to come out.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing to be like the second.
Right. 1968 was a crazy year, just period, looking at the films of it. Because you also had Planet of the Apes, and
the good one.
I love the original Planet of the Apes. It's one of my all-time favorites. I'm not even exaggerating.
You maniacs, you blew it up. God damn you. God damn you all to hell.
It's the best. It's so good. But 68, I mean, it really represented a big change, and you feel that change immediately, I think. So, but yeah, it's it also, we like to keep track sometimes of things in the National Film Registry, and this is in the National Film Registry, deemed culturally significant. And it didn't get added till 2016 though. So, but yeah,
I could see that. There's a few musicals I would put above this to
for sure
be that cultural kind of thing. This, I mean, this made the waves in the way that you would expect given Barbra Streisand's career. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, I still think, it's kind of impossible to give this anything less of a 2. It's kind of an indelible film that's stood the test of time. I think going back and watching this, if you're like, I want to watch a classic musical, put this one on, because if you haven't seen this, put this one on because it's great. There's at least one song in here that you've certainly heard if you have grown up with any amount of musical theater in your life, and other songs that are better than that song, even within the same film. So
yeah, or you can tell that this kind of portrayal by Barbra Streisand has been imitated before. So you've seen something akin to this even without knowing it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I actually didn't expect to be this high on this one upon picking it, but yeah, that puts us at a 17 out of 20 for our total.
Yes, it does.
So yeah, it's a really strong film. It's just great filmmaking, honestly. Great classic filmmaking, a classic film performance. And if you haven't seen it and you're a fan of musical theater, 100% check this one out.
Yep.
But yeah, that wraps up our discussion here.
Hey, this is
Funny
Mikiah
Girl.
with a quick update before we dive into today's episode on Funny Girl. The reason that this is a little late is actually my fault. I got the flu, so my bad. But I also wanted to say that Kyle and I have been having a great time doing this podcast. We really loved getting to dive into different movies each week. And we're still a really young channel here, obviously. We've been doing this for under a year, so we appreciate everybody who's come along for the ride. That said, us being still so new to this, there's a lot of different things that we still want to be able to try. So, for the next little while, we're going to be taking a step back from our traditional podcast, and we're going to be focusing on doing some commentary videos. These aren't reaction videos. We're not like sitting and waiting around and then reacting to things as they're happening. We're going to be watching films and talking throughout them with each other, and then we'll be uploading an edited down version of that, including our best bits with footage of the film. Now, it's going to take a little bit to figure that out for us, how we can best do that, so there might be a little bit of a break here before those videos start coming, and as we figure that out. But I just wanted to thank you for your patience in advance. Let me know what you think about this idea in general. Hopefully one day we'll be able to balance both having the commentaries and just the regular podcast. But for now, yeah, we're going to be just shifting our focus a little bit in a way that I think is going to be a really fun time. Now, if you listen this far in the show, this is kind of an interruption. Usually this would be where one of us reveals to the other one what the next movie is that we'll be watching. And in this case, the movie that Kyle picked, while we did watch it, we actually made it our first ever watch-along movie. But we had an issue with the audio, which is why we need a little bit more time to figure out the logistics of it all. That being said, our first ever movie commentary is going to be for the 1927 Best Picture winning silent film, Wings, of all things. So that was going to be my next regular podcast pick, but then Kyle, who doesn't watch a lot of silent films, was like, man, I gotta be able to comment on this. And I said, you know what? This isn't the normal kind of movie I'd pick for a commentary, but I think it works. So that's going to be our first commentary video. So be prepared for that, for whenever that drops within the next few weeks, I hope, while we figure out the details of all of our new format. But that one should be easy enough because it's in the public domain, so it's online and they can't, knock us for putting up their video. So maybe that's actually a good one to experiment with. But anyway, all right, back to Mikiah and Kyle for outro.
All right, anyway, well, that wraps up this episode of Great American Movie Review. Thank you for joining us once again. I'm Mikiah.
I am Kyle.
And yeah, you can
we
find us...
We do that sometimes, somehow.
Yeah, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. Either way, you can check us out, like I said, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you at the movies.